Hello everyone. Happy St. Patrick's Day. As you can see, it is St. Patrick's Day. I made it very clear. So, my presentation has a lot less pictures than the previous presentation. It is more plain, but it is still worth listening to. So if you're streaming on Facebook, stay tuned and listen to the whole presentation, okay? Alright, so I'm going to talk about my experience living abroad. I first went abroad when I was about 7 years old, but when I was 8 years old, my parents decided that it was too dangerous to live in my hometown in Colombia. I come from Medellin. I was born in 1992. So as you can imagine, when I was 8 years old, Medellin was one of the most dangerous cities to live in the world. Bombs were a common occurrence. Robberies, threats, and many other things happened all the time. My dad received a threat from somebody telling him that if he didn't close down his business, he would have problems. So at that moment, my family decided it was no longer safe for us to be in Colombia anymore. And they decided to move. And naturally, as Colombians decided to go somewhere safer, they went to the United States. It is probably one of the first places Colombians think of when they think about moving abroad. So we moved to Florida. We moved to Florida when I was just 8 years old. And I started school there. It was all very new to me. I didn't speak a bit of English. I had just learned, a little bit of English in elementary school in Colombia, but it was something very basic. I was not in a bilingual school or anything. So I had no idea of what people were saying to me in the classroom, of what the teacher was saying, or any of my classmates were saying when I was in school. And that was very frustrating. That was a very frustrating process because I felt alone. And you may think, oh, but he was in Florida. It was everybody speaks Spanish in Florida. It did work out for my parents with like an adult population, but for people in my classroom, none of the kids that were in my classroom spoke Spanish. There were some Hispanic students, but they didn't speak Spanish, or they didn't want to speak Spanish to me. I never knew if they actually spoke Spanish or not. But I felt alone. I felt frustrated because I couldn't understand. I couldn't understand what people were saying to me, and so at some point I just simply, let it happen. I just went to class and I just sat there, and sat there in my thoughts. Didn't really try to interpret what the teacher was saying. Obviously, it was elementary school, so it still was very visual. But I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't talk to anybody for my whole third year of elementary school in the United States. And that was very frustrating, but it was also really important for my language learning process. Being frustrated is part of learning any language around the world. Even if you think language may come easy to you, there will be points in which you will run into a frustration wall, because you will get confused, you won't be able to use it as fluently as you wish, you won't be able to express all the thoughts you are thinking of, all the things you want to express, and it will become frustrating. And that is the point in which you either go through the frustration process, take it all in, and keep pushing through, or you give up. And most people give up. And it is the point in which you decide to keep going, or you're forced to keep going. In my situation, I didn't decide, okay, I'm going to call it quits, I'm just going to move back to Colombia. No, I didn't have a choice. I had to stay in that classroom. I had to continue being there on my own without any translation whatsoever. But when you choose to learn a language, unlike my situation, you have that decision. So I encourage you, just as an advice, to every time you run into that process, just push through, fight your frustration, and just like anything you really want in the world, try and aim for it and achieve it. So I had a period of frustration and I had a period of isolation. I was isolated for a whole year of school. Obviously, I felt, oh God, I have no friends. I am socially apart from everybody here. I don't talk to anybody. I don't have friends outside of school because I was new to the city I was in. And I was generally a very timid, shy kid when I was growing up. And it was something that was very difficult for me, isolating myself. I had to... okay, so after I went through that process, my parents moved to a new house in a new town, and in that town, I moved to a new school, and I entered 4th grade. When I entered 4th grade, I saw an opportunity to reinvent myself. I was no longer the kid that didn't talk in class, that was isolated from everybody, or that everybody thought was mute. I was a new person. I had an opportunity, a moment, to think of myself as somebody new. Nobody knew me from in that new space. Nobody knew who I was. Nobody knew what people thought of me before. So I saw an opportunity. And that's when I started socializing with everybody. And at this point, nobody could shut me up. I kept talking to everybody. I made friends very quickly. It was as if everything I had kept inside me for a whole year, I just decided to, take it out during my 4th grade, experience. So that was a very different moment for me. It was the moment where I realized that even though I had barely spoken English for a whole year, I could actually speak English and get my ideas through to other people. And that is exactly what happened in my 4th grade experience. And something else happened that I discovered that was very important for language learning. And that comes with the experience of socializing what you're learning. When you socialize with other people who speak that language, you'll realize that you have mistakes, and that those mistakes can be fixed. So this is when you go into a trial and error phase. So a lot of times, I used to read a lot, right? Even when I was in 3rd grade and I was just learning, I started reading entire books in English because it was one of the ways I found myself to escape from my isolation, I suppose. And when you're reading, you sometimes don't know a lot of words, and you simply think of the pronunciation in your head, and you go like, okay, I suppose it's pronounced that way, right? And when you come into a real-life scenario, and you talk to people, and you use a certain word, and you realize that's not the way you use that word, and you are conscious of your mistakes, you are able to fix those mistakes and perfect your language learning process. So, a lot of people are afraid to speak English or French or whatever language they're learning because they go, I'm not ready, I don't speak it well, I have a lot of mistakes. That's the whole point. The whole point is that you have mistakes. The whole point is that you go out there, you talk to people, and you make mistakes, and you realize what your mistakes are so you can fix them. And when you're in a 4th grade classroom, people around you make sure that you're conscious of your mistakes. Kids, they don't have any, barriers of telling you the truth. They go, that's not how you pronounce that, you're a fool, whatever. And of course, sometimes it makes me feel a little bit excluded, but I appreciated it because I knew it was part of my process. And it's extremely important for everybody in any situation in which they're learning a language. So, when you, nowadays, I've learned other languages as years went by. I speak some German, French a little bit, Italian. I'm learning Korean. And I know that if I don't talk to real people, even if I'm a beginner, or even if I'm just in my first steps, just getting to know the language, if I don't talk to people, I'm not going to actually realize how people in a real life context use the language. Language should be learned through context association. It should be learned through situational experiences in which you, through a situation, can learn different ways of expressing something in a much more natural way. When you see things in a book, sometimes it's very distant from real life, and it's very unreal. And it becomes, sometimes it becomes even, when you see written language, it's very different from what you, how you use language spoken or socialized. Spoken language is very different from written language. And you cannot know the difference until you socialize it. So it's really important that if you're learning a language, no matter where you are, you don't even have to travel for this. You can find people through the internet, through blogs, through applications that are extremely available for everybody everywhere nowadays. I mean, there are no excuses to language learning today. If you say, oh, but I can't learn that language because it's really hard, and if I'm not there, I'm not going to be able to learn, it's just an excuse. It means that language is not important enough for you to learn. That is what you're saying when you say something like that. Because it is very easy today in the world of apps, the world of internet, in the world where we can connect to anyone, anywhere in the world, within seconds through an electronic device in our hands that we constantly use, because electronic devices have now become another part of our bodies that we can't live without. So that is another lesson I leave for everybody out there. There are no excuses to language learning. You don't need to have money. You don't need to be able to travel around the entire world to learn a language. You can do it from your own houses, from your own phones, but it has to be important enough. It has to be important enough for you to dedicate and commit to it, because it's not easy, and you will be frustrated, and you will be ashamed at some points, and self-conscious. So there's the part, the next phase of what I call my experience learning English, and it is shaping your identity. So so I told you, you make mistakes, you learn from your mistakes because you're conscious of them, because you socialize them with other people. You correct yourself, you start becoming an actual speaker of that language, and you start shaping your identity. I was a kid, so for me, maybe shaping my identity was a lot easier back then, because I learned fairly quickly and in an environment in which it became a necessity for me, so it was obviously something I could not choose, and something that I had to do. But even if you're not in that situation, you can shape your identity as a language, as a speaker of any language. If you try hard enough, if you go through the process, if you pass that frustration wall, if you go through and you socialize it, and you start becoming conscious of your mistakes, and you start getting a hold of those mistakes, and knowing that they're part of who you are, and who you are in a process of learning whatever you're learning, right? And then you become a speaker of that language. So when you say to yourself, I am an English speaker, or I'm a German speaker, or I'm a Korean speaker, you extend your identity past, and you make yourself bigger. You open more doors. You become, you add new things to your personality, you add new things to your life in general. I don't know about people who are bilingual here in this room or watching on live stream, but I feel I have certain parts of my personality when I'm an English speaker that I don't bring out when I'm speaking Spanish, or vice versa. So I think that learning a new language also allows you to explore new parts of yourself, and it allows you to broaden your identity. So I think that's really important when you're, for you to be aware of when you're learning a new language. The other part is that the more languages you learn, the more you you get tainted in language learning, and the more you explore that world, the more opportunities you will find in the world. Especially with English, because English is a global language. And if you speak English, you will open many, many doors all around the world, not just in English-speaking countries. But with any other language as well. You will open new opportunities, you will see new job opportunities, new studying opportunities, new meeting people opportunities, right? You will get to know people you'd never thought you'd meet, right? You will meet people from countries you didn't think existed. You will be more conscious of the world you live in. And you will realize that you don't have to stick to your local rules and norms, that you can shape yourself from a broader perspective, that you can learn things from many other cultures and integrate them into your life and personality. You become better people, more worldly people, more culturalized people, people who are, I like the phrase global citizens. I think being a global citizen is being conscious of the world you're in, respecting the world you're in, respecting all other cultures, and not trying to impose yourself or your culture or your way of life upon any other person. And I think that is something the world really needs right now. And that comes from language learning, but it definitely is complemented by traveling. So that is my lesson for everybody today, is go ahead and travel and use your tools that you have available to you to learn the language you want to learn. Make it important to you. Make it a priority in your list. Say, I want to learn English, I want to learn French, whatever, and I will make it a priority, so I will make sure there are no excuses. That if I have an appointment to learn English on an application or online, or I have a class, I will not skip it for the world, because it is one of my highest priorities, because I know what learning a language can do for my life. So that is what the other part of this presentation is to ask yourself, where do you want to go? What language do you want to learn? And write down how you're going to do it. What are you going to do to go to that place? Because a lot of times we have very vague, daydreaming ideas of what we want to do with our lives. Oh, I would love to visit this or that country. Why are my friends traveling all around the world? I go on Facebook and I see my friends posting pictures in Southeast Asia, Middle East, Europe, China, Japan, South America, all over South America. And I go, why am I not doing it? Well, think of a place you want to go. Choose a place you want to go. And write down the steps you will take to get there. And make it real. On your next holiday. In July. On Christmas. Whatever. Make it real. Make it happen. Okay? There are no excuses anymore. The internet has exposed us to what we really mean when we say we don't have time or we don't have access to. There is no such thing anymore. So have the courage to do it and do it. That is my lesson for everybody today. And thank you.